So NIO CEO has just denied the rumor that they are buying a factory in Belgium, the Audi factory, and Audi's selling it because it's unprofitable, and they want to keep the jobs, the workers there, so they don't want them to lose their jobs. So they're selling the factory, and it was reported that allegedly that NIO officials were visiting the factory to inspect it and perhaps even buy it. But of course, NIO CEO has denied those rumors, saying that if Audi can't even keep this factory, and they don't even have enough money to keep it afloat, then how can NIO keep this afloat? All right, or keep it alive? So this is definitely not on the table. All right, 100%. So he just straight up outright denied that rumor. It's not happening. Impossible.
刚才有人爆出来，未来要接收要收购奥迪在塞尔的工厂，
这不给我们骂了？人家奥迪都养不起工厂，我俩养得起？我不知道这信息从哪来的。我们没有接手奥迪工厂的计划。
And of course, they shifted their strategy a lot in Europe with the fact with these tariffs coming in and this huge uncertainty. So they're pausing expansion, which is a very good thing. Conserving cash, don't overspend and expand when you don't really need to, especially in unfavorable environments. But the strategy going forward, they still got swap stations that are hugely profitable. They can't put tariffs on swap station, on energy trading. Those swap stations generating 200,000 euros in pure profit per year just in energy trading, grid stabilization. That's a huge, massive opportunity. And global expansion-wise, we're just looking at the Middle East, and because of the U.S. 100% tariffs, it is alleged that there's basically very little chance of U.S. expansion at this moment because of the 100% tariffs. It's going to be very difficult to sell the cars in the U.S. And of course, selling the cars in the U.S. also means massive expansion in infrastructure. You got to build swap stations. So it's going to be very difficult and very capital intensive. And for now, I think they're mostly focused on the domestic market here in China. Get a good dominance on the luxury EV market. NIO already achieved that with 40% market share in the luxury EV market. And then Envo, of course, get that to be very successful in the mass market category. And then, of course, Firefly, launch that very soon, and then have that be dominant in the budget category. So from 100K RMB all the way up to 900K RMB, NIO's going to have a product for everybody, and NIO's going to be the dominant player, the main player in all those categories. And if that happens, that's going to be very beneficial for NIO stockholders nonetheless. You're going to have a behemoth right there, guys. But that also means they're focusing more on China and not so much on the rest of Europe or so much on the US, so to speak. They did talk about expansion into Brazil and stuff, but since in Brazil they increased import taxes and tariffs as well, so it kind of seemed unreasonable for them to expand there. So France, they were going to expand into France, Italy, those countries. It seems to be off the table for now. In the UK, it seems to be pausing for now. Focus more on the Chinese domestic market, and that's what they should be doing, right? The Chinese market is the number one biggest automobile market after the U.S. The U.S., of course, is number one, and they could sell a lot of cars in the U.S. as well, but here China is number two. So, of course, focus on that first. And I guess the strategy to avoid the tariffs would be to buy that factory. But, of course, it doesn't really make sense to buy that factory, right? Because you're not selling a whole lot of cars in Europe. It could make sense if you're going to build that factory, have that factory build both Envo vehicles and Firefly vehicles and NIO vehicles. But NIO CEO has said that even with the tariffs in Europe, their Envo vehicles will still be very competitive with that tariff slapped on over there in Europe. So that's very, very interesting. It still might not be worth it for them to build a factory there. That could make things a lot more expensive. So still they're keeping it here in China. Of course, it does mean U.S. expansion. It's going to take some time until you see something changed about the 100% tariffs. And I think you guys, if you're in the U.S., maybe petition for change in this rule, right? Perhaps tell your politicians that, hey, this is unfair. We want to be able to buy a NIO vehicle in the U.S. And apparently NIO CEO said they've been planning U.S. expansion for the past 6 years. When NIO just went IPO, they said they were going to expand into the U.S. in 2020. But of course, that never happened, right? That was their goal. But of course, they have goals, and then you have reality where it's like the 100% tariff that's not very likely. So they're going to focus resources on China. And I kind of feel bad for the U.S. team. They always wanted to have their vehicles there and selling in the U.S. That would be absolutely fantastic. And the products would sell very well in the U.S. There's a need for stuff like NIO, right? The NIO house, the NIO community, swap stations, they would do very well in the U.S. and it would offer very good convenience as well, and especially in New York, a crowded area, not lots of parking spots and limited infrastructure space. Having a swap station would be very convenient, maybe even underground swap station. You actually have that here in China, underground swap stations. So we'll have to wait for U.S. expansion. We'll have to wait for further European expansion. I guess they should see how UAE is going, because UAE, it's they're coming to the UAE. So see how that goes. If that's very successful, they might expand into the rest of the Middle East, right? So first Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and then maybe some other European countries, Saudi Arabia maybe. We'll see. All right, that's going to hopefully be very profitable for NIO going forward. But of course, no chance of having a factory there in Belgium. It's more likely that they might buy and make a factory in the U.S. to avoid those 100% tariffs. But that's going to take a lot of commitment. That's going to take a lot of money. And they have to be adamant about U.S. expansion. But first, they need to focus resources here on China, in China, to make things like good. Make sure that they are the dominant player here in China. So that's the whole wrap about things going forward. And I think this is very good for shareholders. It's a very responsible thing to do. Don't overexpand, all right? As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.